It starts without warning. No siren, no flashing headline. Just a silent click from a camera mounted above a road you've driven 1,000 times, and in that instant, the rules change. As of February 2, 2026, speed enforcement in Canada is no longer something you see coming. It is something that finds you. Across the country, new speed and camera rules are reshaping how driving is monitored, penalized, and remembered. And for millions of drivers, the shift is immediate, automated, and unforgiving. This is not about being pulled over. This is not about explaining yourself. This is about systems that decide in seconds, issue fines instantly, and leave no room for debate. The core change is simple but powerful. Speed enforcement has moved decisively from human judgment to automated certainty. Cameras do not hesitate. They do not issue warnings. They do not forget. Under the new framework active in 2026, speed cameras, red light cameras, and average speed monitoring systems have been expanded in scope, upgraded in technology, and integrated directly into provincial enforcement databases. Once your vehicle is captured exceeding a posted limit or violating a monitored zone, the process begins automatically. Plate recognition, timestamp verification, speed calculation, and ticket generation happen without human intervention. For drivers, that means fines can be issued faster than ever, sometimes the same day, sometimes within hours. One of the most significant shifts is the broader use of average speed cameras, also known as point-to-point enforcement. Instead of measuring how fast you're going at one location, these systems calculate your average speed between two fixed points. You may slow down at one camera and speed up later, but the system tracks your total time and distance. If your average exceeds the limit, the violation is recorded. This eliminates the old habit of braking briefly for a camera and accelerating again. Under the 2026 rules, average speed enforcement is no longer limited to select pilot projects. It is being applied on highways, arterial roads, construction zones, and corridors with a history of collisions. Drivers who rely on quick adjustments are now exposed over long stretches of road. Speed thresholds have also changed in how they are enforced. While posted limits may look the same, tolerance margins are tightening in many jurisdictions. Automated systems are calibrated to strict standards, and in some areas the buffer above the speed limit before a ticket is issued has been reduced. This does not necessarily mean every kilometer per hour over the limit will result in a fine, but it does mean the margin for error is smaller and more consistent. Unlike human officers who may exercise discretion, cameras apply the same threshold every time. Consistency is the point, and it works against drivers who rely on leniency. Another major development in 2026 is the expansion of camera-enforced zones. School zones and construction zones have long been priorities, but now municipalities and provinces are designating additional areas as community safety zones, automated enforcement corridors, and high-risk routes. In these zones, fines are often higher, penalties are stricter, and enforcement operates continuously, not just during certain hours. Some areas that were previously monitored only during peak times are now enforced around the clock. Drivers who assume cameras are inactive at night or on weekends are discovering otherwise when tickets arrive days later. The technology itself has evolved. Modern speed and traffic cameras use high-resolution imaging capable of capturing plates clearly in low light, adverse weather, and at high speeds. Infrared and multi-angle systems reduce errors caused by glare, shadows, or lane changes. Plate recognition software cross-checks vehicle information against registration databases in real time. This reduces the chance of misidentification and increases the confidence of enforcement agencies in issuing fines without manual review. Appeals are still possible, but the evidence presented is often more detailed and harder to challenge than in the past. Instant fines do not always mean immediate payment, but they do mean immediate issuance. In some provinces, digital ticketing systems now notify registered vehicle owners electronically as soon as a violation is processed. Instead of waiting weeks for mail delivery, drivers may receive notifications through online accounts linked to vehicle registration or driver services. This shortens the gap between the offense and the consequence, reinforcing the sense that enforcement is constant and unavoidable. The psychological impact is deliberate. When consequences feel immediate, behavior changes faster. Fines themselves are also evolving. While base amounts are set by provincial law, many jurisdictions have adjusted fine structures to reflect inflation, safety priorities, and repeat offenses. Speeding in automated zones can carry higher penalties than equivalent speeding detected by an officer elsewhere. In some areas, fines escalate based on how much over the limit you were, with steep increases at higher thresholds. This means that what once felt like a minor infraction can now result in a significant financial penalty, especially in designated enforcement zones. Importantly, automated camera tickets are typically issued to the vehicle owner, not the driver. This has not changed, but its implications are growing. The registered owner is responsible for the fine regardless of who was driving at the time. While demerit points are often not applied for camera-issued tickets, the financial burden remains. For households with multiple drivers, rental vehicles, or company fleets, managing responsibility becomes more complex. Fleet operators in particular are facing increased administrative costs as more violations are captured automatically. Privacy concerns have accompanied the expansion of camera enforcement, and 2026 rules address this through stricter data handling requirements. Images are used solely for enforcement purposes, stored for defined periods, and accessed only by authorized systems. However, the sheer volume of data collected has increased dramatically. Millions of vehicle movements are scanned daily, even if no violation occurs. The system filters out compliant drivers, but the infrastructure is always watching. This is the trade-off governments emphasize: reduce collisions and fatalities in exchange for constant monitoring. Supporters of the new rules point to data showing reductions in speeding, collisions, and injuries in areas with automated enforcement. Consistent enforcement changes habits. Drivers slow down not because they see a police car, but because they assume monitoring is always active. Critics argue that cameras are revenue tools rather than safety measures, especially when placed in areas with sudden speed changes or limited signage. In response, many jurisdictions have updated signage requirements, mandating clear warnings before camera-enforced zones. Still, missing a sign is no longer a defense when the system records a violation. Another subtle but important change in 2026 is integration. Speed cameras are no longer isolated tools. They are part of broader traffic management systems that include red light enforcement, lane use monitoring, and even noise detection in some pilot areas. While speed remains the focus, the infrastructure is adaptable. The same cameras can be upgraded or repurposed as laws evolve. For drivers, this means the enforcement environment is not static. What is monitored today may expand tomorrow without major visible changes on the road. Construction zones deserve special attention under the new rules. These areas now receive some of the strictest automated enforcement. Temporary speed limits are enforced with the same rigor as permanent ones, and fines are often doubled due to worker safety provisions. Cameras are installed at zone entry and exit points to calculate average speed through the entire work area. Even if no workers are visible, the rules apply. The assumption that enforcement is relaxed outside active work hours is increasingly incorrect. Urban areas are also seeing denser camera placement. Intersections, corridors with pedestrian traffic, and areas near transit hubs are prioritized. This creates overlapping enforcement zones where multiple systems operate within short distances. A single trip through a city can pass dozens of monitored points. Compliance becomes less about reacting and more about maintaining consistent, lawful driving throughout the journey. The era of selective caution is ending. For new drivers and newcomers to Canada, the learning curve is steep. Understanding where and how enforcement operates is now as important as knowing the basic rules of the road. Licensing materials and driver education programs are being updated to reflect automated enforcement realities. Is placed on speed awareness, zone recognition, and the long-term cost of repeated violations. Insurance implications, while indirect, also matter. Even without demerit points, repeated fines can signal risky behavior that insurers may consider through other data sources. There's also a financial ripple effect. Municipalities and provinces reinvest revenue from camera fines into road safety initiatives, infrastructure upgrades, and further enforcement expansion. This creates a feedback loop. Successful enforcement funds more enforcement. From a policy perspective, this is framed as self-sustaining safety investment. From a driver's perspective, it means the system is not shrinking. It is growing, refining, and becoming more precise over time. Disputing a camera-issued ticket remains possible, but the process has changed. Evidence packages now include multiple images, precise speed calculations, calibration records, and timestamps. Courts are increasingly familiar with these cases, and challenges based on technical doubt are less likely to succeed without strong proof. The burden feels heavier on the driver, even if the legal standard has not changed. The message is clear: prevention is easier than contestation. Weather and visibility are no longer reliable shields. Modern systems compensate for rain, snow, fog, and darkness. Infrared imaging and adaptive exposure ensure plates are readable in conditions that once hindered enforcement. This matters in Canada, where winter driving is common. Speed limits do not relax for weather unless explicitly posted, and cameras enforce the posted limit regardless of conditions. Drivers are expected to adjust behavior proactively, not reactively. Rural drivers are not exempt. While early camera programs focused on cities, 2026 sees expansion into regional highways and rural routes with high collision rates. Long stretches of road that felt unmonitored are now subject to point-to-point enforcement. The perception that cameras are an urban issue is outdated. Consistency across regions is a stated goal, and deployment reflects that. The psychological shift is perhaps the most profound change. Driving in Canada is no longer about watching for enforcement. It is about assuming enforcement. The uncertainty that once favored drivers has flipped. Now the uncertainty lies in not knowing exactly where every camera is, only that they are widespread and active. This creates a constant low-level pressure to comply, which is exactly what policymakers intend. As February 2, 2026 becomes a reference point, the message from authorities is unified. Speed limits are not suggestions, and enforcement is no longer sporadic. Technology has removed gaps, excuses, and delays. The system is designed to be invisible until it acts, and when it acts, it does so with documentation, automation, and speed. Drivers who adapt experience little disruption. Drivers who do not face repeated, immediate consequences. This is not a temporary campaign. It is a structural change in how traffic laws are enforced in Canada. Cameras do not take breaks. Databases do not forget. And the road you know may now be watching you in ways it never did before. If you found this update important, subscribe for verified Canada policy updates. Share this video so other drivers are not caught off guard.